Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are putting the spreadsheets away. We're not really looking at market movements or quarterly reports today.
No numbers.
We are jumping into a deep analysis of the sources that explore the true human relationship with money, moving far beyond simple mathematics and, diving into the realm of identity and aspiration.
That's really the core realization the sources offer you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Money is fundamentally less about those clean formulas, interest rates, financial engineering, and far more about the stories we tell ourselves about success.
Right.
It's driven by psychology, by envy, social aspirations, even deep-seated insecurity. We've learned that spending money is truly an art, much more than a science.
Yeah.
And because of that, there is absolutely no universal formula for happiness when it comes to spending.
And that gap, between the neat financial theory and the messy human reality, that's kind of our mission today. We want to distill the difference between getting what you want, which often boils down to just more money or more stuff, versus what you truly need. Things like, family, health, purpose, independence. Understanding this chasm is crucial, I think, to avoiding disappointment, which so often seems to be the silent killer of wealth accumulation.
Definitely. And we're going to explore how people achieve what some call psychological wealth, that feeling of contentment, really, regardless of your actual net worth, and how that connects to things like social debt, which is the silent cost of chasing status.
Social debt, I like that term.
Ultimately, we aim to explore that really powerful insight. All behavior makes sense with enough information, especially financial behavior.
Okay, let's unpack this first idea then. Money is a tool. We've all heard the cliche, right? Money can't buy happiness. But our sources consistently argue that this is just a huge oversimplification.
It really is. Money can absolutely buy happiness, but, and this is the big but, only if you know how to wield it effectively. It's an incredibly powerful tool. But our education system, society in general, it teaches us how to acquire it, not really how to successfully use it to, optimize for actual joy or contentment.
That's the critical distinction, isn't it? The ability to control the tool itself. It reminds me of that famous logic, I think, attributed to Winston Churchill about alcohol.
Oh, yeah, I know the one.
He claimed he got more out of it than it got out of him.
Right.
And you can apply that exact same logic to finance. We see it all the time. Rich people whose money ends up getting more out of them than they ever get out of it.
Absolutely. They spend their lives trapped on that hedonic treadmill, just chasing the next acquisition without any real philosophical sense of how to use that wealth to increase their actual contentment.
It's a tragic dynamic when you see it play out. And conversely, you often encounter people maybe of low or modest income who somehow manage to extract tremendous value out of very little money.
Exactly. They leverage it strategically, maybe to acquire the things that truly fulfill them, oftentimes, or education or experiences, not just stuff.
So what truly matters then isn't really the size of the bank account, is it? It's more the ability to understand and maybe control the deep psychological behaviors tied to how and why you spend your money.
And this takes us right back to the fundamental building blocks of what constitutes a happy life. We can look to someone like Carl Jung, the renowned psychiatrist. He outlined what he believed were the sort of basic ingredients for human happiness.
Okay.
And it's highly instructional because money, as a primary goal in itself, is glaringly absent from his list.
Right. Let's go through Jung's framework. He offered 5 pillars, I believe. First, good physical and mental health. That seems obvious.
Foundational, yes.
Second, good personal relationships. Also crucial. Third, the faculty for perceiving beauty, whether that's in art, nature, life itself. Fourth, reasonable living standards combined with satisfactory work. And fifth, and this feels key, a philosophic or religious viewpoint for coping with life's inevitable difficulties. The vicissitudes, as he put it.
And money clearly affects points 1 and 4, right? You can buy better health care, potentially. And it certainly dictates your living standards to a degree.
Sure.
But it is not the ingredient itself. You could be a billionaire and, frankly, fail every single point on Jung's list. And this concept, it's far from new. It echoes historical observations that, people seem to have been ignoring for centuries.
Like those made by William Dawson. I think it was in his 1907 book, The Quest of the Simple Life.
That's the one. Fascinating historical snapshot.
Yeah, Dawson observed his wealthy London peers, and he noted that they devoted basically every waking moment to the pursuit of money and professional success. Yet they seemed universally miserable, just racked with anxiety and dissatisfaction. Meanwhile, those living far more simply, people who had consciously sort of opted out of that rat race.
They were often described as jubilant, happy, content.
Exactly.
Dawson realized the core trap there. Those who believed they were trying to gain freedom by acquiring more money were actually, in reality, held utterly captive by it. Their life wasn't a pursuit of happiness at all.
No.
It was just this constant, debilitating anxiety over their investments, their social standing, their next acquisition. It became a truly vicious cycle.
How so?
Well, they sought money, supposedly to become happier. But the very obsession required to maintain and grow that money was the one thing actively preventing their happiness.
So, okay, if the simple life works, what does that simple life actually mean today? Does it mean, selling everything and moving into a tiny house off the grid?
Not necessarily, no. Dawson defined the simple life more as having freedom from the tyranny of things, regardless of your actual income level.
Okay.
You might still have an extravagant home or fine luxuries, whatever, but the life is simple in the sense that money serves you, not the other way around.
Ah, okay. So it means truly choosing your lifestyle, your hours, your identity.
Right. Rather than feeling professionally or socially beholden to the appeal of just perpetual wealth acquisition or, what other people think you should be doing.
I think that's the crucial differentiator then. Recognizing when the tool stops serving you and you start serving the tool. For the average listener, how do you even know when you've crossed that line? When you've gone from acquiring something necessary maybe for comfort or stability into acquiring a master?
Well, I think the line is crossed when the pursuit of the acquisition itself starts to generate deep, persistent anxiety, or when it begins to actively detract from those jung factors we mentioned.
Like relationships or mental health.
Exactly. If buying that bigger house means you actually spend less time with your family because you're working more or commuting further,
Right.
or if you're constantly worrying about the upkeep and the mortgage impacting your mental health, then the money, or the thing it bought, has arguably become a master.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And certainly when you start sacrificing your own independence just for status, you're definitely serving the money then. Which brings us, I think, directly to the status trap.
Okay, let's pivot to that status trap because it seems to capture so many people, especially high earners. I love the anecdote you shared about the $21,000 armchair. It just perfectly crystallizes the whole problem.
Oh, that day, yeah. I was working as a valet at this really high-end elite furniture show, watching people spend just astronomical sums on, furniture.
And this guy came out.
Yeah, this man came out absolutely giddy,
Yeah.
having just dropped $21,000 on a single armchair. And frankly, it was kind of hideous.
21 grand.
I know. And when he caught our eye, us, the staff, and he saw the completely stunned look on our faces at the sheer price tag, his response was just the absolute key to understanding so much modern consumer behavior.
What did he say?
He just shrugged, almost defensively, and said, "Boys, I know. It's crazy. But when you have money, this is what you're supposed to do."
Supposed to do. Wow. That isn't about utility, is it? Or comfort, or even aesthetic pleasure. He was conforming.
Exactly. Conforming to a perceived social mandate. It was like a mandatory purchase dictated by the expectations of his socioeconomic group. The purchase wasn't an end in itself.
No, it was like a payment.
Precisely. A payment required to maintain his status, a kind of mindless chase for wealth and the objects that signal it, but without any meaningful internal why behind it.
This is the central argument, then, that we need to unpack for the listener. We constantly confuse the desire for nice stuff with the true, deeper psychological desire, which is really for respect, admiration, and attention from others.
Yes. We call this the "may I have your attention, please" dynamic in our notes. The expensive car or the imported marble countertop is just the ticket we buy, thinking it will grant us the attention we actually crave deep down.
And this craving, it almost guarantees what you called social debt, that hidden, insidious cost of status.
Absolutely. If you buy the $21,000 armchair just to signal that you belong, you've just taken on a debt. It's not on a balance sheet, but it's real.
How so?
Because now you have to keep spending to maintain that signal. You have to keep the house looking pristine, make sure the car is the latest model, constantly worry about being seen and approved of by the very people whose opinions you sought to buy with the chair in the first place.
Wow. So social debt is basically the anxiety and the effort required to maintain a lifestyle designed purely for external validation.
That's a great way to put it. It is the absolute opposite of independence. And you can test the real value of this kind of debt yourself by performing the reverse obituary challenge.
Oh, I love that exercise. Tell us about it.
Okay, just stop for a minute and Genuinely try to write down what you want your obituary to say about you. What do you want people to remember?
Right. And it will invariably be filled with what they call eulogy virtues. Being loved, respected, kind, wise, a good parent or friend. It's all character-based stuff.
Exactly. But you absolutely will not see your car's horsepower listed there, or the annual cost of maintaining your yacht, the brand name of your clothes, the specific material of your kitchen marble.
No way.
In the final calculus of a life well lived, we inherently know these material markers don't truly matter, yet we spend decades chasing them.
It's fascinating that this internal conflict was observed so long ago. Adam Smith, even before he wrote The Wealth of Nations, he explored this in the theory of moral sentiments. I think that was back in 1759.
Yeah, remarkable foresight. He asked why people engaged in all the toil and bustle of this world. What was the point?
And what did he conclude?
He concluded that the primary motivation wasn't really to supply basic necessities, because even the lowest wage workers of his time generally had basic food and shelter.
Yeah.
The true end of avarice and ambition, Smith argued, is to be observed, to be attended to be taken notice of with sympathy, complacency, and approbation. We value the attention and the accompanying vanity that money brings, often more than the actual comfort or ease of the possessions themselves.
That desire for external validation, it leads directly to what psychologists call the folly of extrinsic pride, right? As distinct from intrinsic pride.
Correct. Intrinsic pride is the healthy kind, that authentic satisfaction in oneself, one's skills, or one's work.
But extrinsic pride.
Extrinsic, or sometimes called hubristic pride, that's the dangerous kind. It's based entirely on others' opinions, on comparing yourself against some external benchmark. And the sources are really clear on this. Chasing extrinsic pride is like chasing junk food.
How so?
It provides maybe a temporary, shallow burst of satisfaction, but it leaves less appetite for the truly nourishing food, things like family, wisdom, humor, genuine connection.
And the long-term data actually backs this up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There are longitudinal studies linking the valuing of extrinsic pride, prioritizing material wealth, and status signaling.
Yeah, consistently linked to significantly higher levels of anxiety, depression, long-term dissatisfaction, sometimes even issues like substance abuse. You're essentially sacrificing genuine well-being for a fleeting attention.
Which makes the most valuable financial asset you can possibly possess, the ability to simply not need to impress anyone.
That's it. That is psychological wealth. Look at people who have already achieved immense fame or genuine respect for their skills, their craft. Think about former NFL player Chad Johnson, Ochocinco.
Right. He famously revealed he saved something like 83% of his salary.
Yeah, and avoided flashy jewelry, all that stuff. His logic was brilliant. He explained, if you can get to a point in your career where your name becomes bigger than anything you can purchase, there's your value.
That's powerful. If people respect and admire you for who you are and what you genuinely do, the expensive accessories just become kind of pointless.
Exactly. The inner scorecard completely obliterates the need for the outer scorecard. When you think about your own heroes, maybe your parents, mentors, you admire them for their character, right? Their strength, their kindness.
Definitely not their clothes or their car.
Not their clothes or car. Once you truly internalize that people are respected and admired for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with possessions, your own priorities inevitably start to shift. If someone feels this constant need to buy expensive, flashy things, well, it's often an indicator that they feel less real value or security internally.
Okay, this transition from the external, status-driven world to the internal, psychological drivers feels really crucial. Because if status is ultimately pointless and money is just a tool, why do people make financial decisions that look so irrational to the rest of us sometimes?
Well, the answer lies in the core principle for this next section. There really is no single right way to spend money. Why? Because there are no universal laws for happiness. What makes me content might look absolutely crazy to you, and vice versa. It's all derived from our unique, highly personal past experiences.
So it comes back to that essential question we need to ask others, and maybe more importantly, ask ourselves when we judge someone's financial choice.
Yes. What have you experienced that I haven't experienced that makes you believe what you do? If you start with that premise, the snap judgments just tend to fade away. Because financial decisions are so often deeply emotional responses to unique pasts.
You illustrated this truth with that profound insight from, I think, the social work and foster care systems.
Right. Social workers frequently deal with children from backgrounds of just deep poverty, instability, abuse, Kids whose behavior is often consistently poor by societal standards.
Right. They might skip class, fight, seem unable to plan long term, struggle with basic social skills.
And it's incredibly easy for an outside observer, someone who grew up with security, to look at that behavior and just say, why can't you just behave better? Ensure a better future. You're self-sabotaging. It looks like willful defiance.
Yeah, I can see that.
But the crucial realization among those dedicated social workers is this. All behavior makes sense with enough information. Once you understand the child's constant world, the food insecurity, the lack of physical safety, the absence of predictable love and attention, their actions aren't really willful defiance.
What are they then?
They are understandable, often logical survival mechanisms honed for an immediate hostile environment. They simply haven't had the chance to learn the basic stability and long-term planning skills that most of us just take for granted.
And this framework applies directly to adult spending habits too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We see how past scarcity or fear or shame fuels current spending behavior. You mentioned the Roaring '20s in America.
Yes, a perfect example. There's an absolute explosion of consumption, parties showing off wealth with expensive new tech like cars, radios, clothes.
Why the frenzy, though?
Because it wasn't just random frivolousness. It was arguably a massive psychological reaction to the poverty and grinding uncertainty that defined the years immediately before World War I, the Spanish flu pandemic, crippling post-war recession.
Okay.
They weren't spending because they were subtly good at math. They were trying to heal an emotional wound. They were trying to make up for lost time and feel the joyous opposite of the prior misery. It was like a societal expression of revenge against those lean years.
That specific emotional drive feels timeless. You see it today, maybe in the successful businessman who grew up poor and felt constantly snubbed by wealthier classmates.
Right. And he might insist his daughter attend the most expensive private college she gets into, even if a public university offers a genuinely superior education for her specific field.
Why would he do that?
For him, that huge tuition bill isn't really a payment for education. It's a social trophy. It signals to the world, and maybe specifically to his past critics, that he triumphed. If you didn't grow up with that specific deep feeling of being snubbed, the decision makes no mathematical sense.
But with enough information about his past,
It becomes perfectly rational as an emotional repair mechanism.
we also see the opposite reaction sometimes. That idea of post-traumatic broke syndrome.
Yes, that term was popularized by financial educator Tiffany Alish. It describes people who have successfully generated wealth but struggle immensely to actually spend it, even on necessities or things that would significantly improve their quality of life.
And this syndrome, it manifests not just in spending, but often in things like investment anxiety, too.
Absolutely. They might keep far too much money sitting in cash, unable to tolerate even minor market fluctuations, because they subconsciously interpret any financial decline as an imminent return to abject poverty. They're constantly conserving resources for a disaster that, statistically, is highly unlikely to wipe out their current substantial assets.
It just hammers home that people spend money to reconcile their current needs with these unique past lessons. And these lessons create huge perspective gaps between people, like that extreme example you shared of the poor husband and wife facing eviction.
Oh, right. A social worker was trying to convince them of the importance of saving money.
Yes.
Putting some aside.
And what happened?
They just laughed at her, called her a future thinker. They explained, you have the luxury of thinking about the future. We don't. Our vision of the future is the next 24 hours.
Wow.
The concept of saving wasn't rejected because they were ignorant. It was rejected because their time horizon was dictated purely by immediate survival needs. It's like that anecdote of the profoundly hungry man trying to pay for a meal with Monopoly money. He was just a Zen master of the right now, prioritizing immediate need over abstract societal rules.
This realization really requires us to try and stop being so judgmental about others' choices. We all exhibit that classic confirmation bias, don't we? Like George Carlin's joke about driving.
Yes. Everyone driving slower than you is an idiot, and everyone driving faster than you is a maniac.
Exactly. We naturally view any financial decision different from ours as somehow wrong or stupid or ill-informed.
But that kind of arrogance is a massive roadblock to our own self-growth. If you constantly criticize how someone else spends their money, you subconsciously convince yourself there's only one right way to live yours. And that bullheaded confidence stops you from wondering if your own decisions, driven by your unique fears and aspirations, could actually be better tailored to your own happiness. A healthy financial philosophy requires, I think, respect for others' experiences, appreciation of your own history, and a deep understanding that, yeah, all behavior makes sense with enough information.
Okay, so if the purpose of money isn't just buying that $21,000 armchair or paying down a social debt, what is the highest purpose? Our sources draw this crucial, powerful distinction that the listener really needs to internalize.
Right.
The difference between being rich and being wealthy.
This distinction is absolutely vital. The rich person has money, right? Money in the bank to buy the stuff they want, to buy assets, maybe to buy status.
Okay.
The wealthy person, however, has control. They have control over what that money does to their personality, their time, their freedom, and importantly, their mental health. Wealth without independence is fundamentally a unique and often quite debilitating form of poverty.
And we see the profound danger of confusing these terms in history, like with the collapse of the Vanderbilt family fortune. Cornelius Vanderbilt left this enormous estate equivalent to something like, what, $300 billion today?
Just staggering wealth.
Yeah.
Designed to secure his descendants for generations, yet within 60 years or so, almost nothing was left. And the lives of many of his heirs were defined by absurdity and, frankly, tragedy.
What went wrong?
Their life purpose became this perverse contest, seeing who could spend money the fastest. They devoted themselves to what one observer called expense regardless of pleasure, driven by this insatiable need to display their inherited status.
Wow.
Their pursuit of spending was an extreme form of that social debt we talked about. They had riches, yes, but absolutely zero independence. They were controlled by their money, which became a social and mental liability that was constantly demanding to be serviced.
So the ultimate purchase, then, the highest goal, is independence. The truly priceless asset is the ability to walk away, the ability to not need to impress. This idea of the inner versus the outer scorecard is illustrated perfectly by those two sailors in the infamous 1968 Golden Globe race, Donald Crowhurst and Bernard Moitessier.
Oh, such a powerful story. Crowhurst was driven purely by the outer scorecard. He was, by most accounts, a professional failure, basically bankrupt, and he saw this round-the-world yacht race as his one chance at redemption, at fame, at attention.
So he built a boat.
He built a barely seaworthy trimaran, the Tenaf Electron, and when he realized early on he couldn't actually compete without risking his life, he resorted to elaborate fraud. He just drifted aimlessly in the remote Atlantic, sending fake coordinates back home, creating this completely fictional narrative of success.
And the press bought it.
Hook, line, and sinker. The press and public celebrated his supposed record-breaking speed, but of course this only intensified his internal anxiety. He was trapped. If he returned triumphant, his logs would be forensically examined, leading to certain humiliation, disgrace, guaranteed bankruptcy. Facing this impossible choice, Crowhurst just succumbed to the pressure and, tragically, took his own life at sea. His story is a devastating illustration of prioritizing those extrinsic benchmarks over reality.
Just awful. And Moitessier.
Moitessier, conversely, lived entirely by the inner scorecard. He was a world-class sailor who actually despised the commercialization and the media circus surrounding the race. 5 months into the challenge, leading easily, almost certain to win, he started to feel physically sick at the thought of returning to what he called the snake pit of society and the demands of fame.
So what did he do?
He made this incredibly radical decision. He quit the race he was winning. He pulled alongside a passing freighter and delivered a message in a film canister.
What did it say?
It said, "I am continuing nonstop toward the Pacific Islands because I am happy at sea and perhaps to save my soul." He abandoned a guaranteed cash prize, global fame, turned his boat around and sailed another 7,000 miles to Tahiti, where he found peace and built a life centered around internal joy, not external validation.
Wow. The ability to walk away from external validation, from what looks like success to everyone else, that truly is the most valuable financial asset, isn't it?
It really is. And savings, fundamentally, is simply your ticket to that independence. Every dollar of savings buys you $1 of options, $1 of freedom, $1 of time.
We see this modern contrast sometimes in professional athletes who often represent the ultimate case study in sudden, massive wealth. You mentioned Antoine Walker.
Yeah, made something like $108 million in his NBA career. He spent relentlessly on status symbols, fleets of cars, maintaining this huge personal payroll for dozens of hangers-on. He completely lost control, racked up enormous debt, and eventually went bankrupt.
And the contrast?
Contrast that with John Urschel. NFL player, lived very modestly, saved diligently, and prioritized intellectual fulfillment over signaling his wealth. He retired early, having maintained total control over his resources.
And he went on to?
Went on to get his PhD in mathematics at MIT.
Whose life do you admire more? I mean, most people, upon reflection, would admire Urschel, wouldn't they? He used money to purchase time and intellectual freedom. Walker was rich and became poor. Urschel was wealthy and became independent.
Exactly. And independence isn't some binary destination either. It's a spectrum of freedom that you purchase bit by bit with every dollar you manage to save. Level 7 might be achieving enough financial cushion to quit a toxic job or a terrible boss without fear.
Okay.
Level 15 might be waking up every single morning realizing you can spend your time doing pretty much what you want, when you want, with whom you want. The goal is always just moving up that spectrum.
This realization about time and money, it leads to what feels like the greatest philosophical conflict in personal finance. The tension between compounding, which requires patience for tomorrow, and living for today, because, you are a long time dead. How do we resolve that tension?
I think the best advice isn't simply live for today or save diligently for tomorrow. It's more nuanced. It's the regret minimization framework.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means you must actively attempt to minimize your future regret while acknowledging that what you are likely to regret will fundamentally change as you age.
Can you give an example?
Sure. When you have young children, the major potential regret might be sacrificing precious time with them for a slightly bigger paycheck or a more demanding job.
Right, you can't get that time back.
Exactly. But later in life, when the kids are grown and that specific opportunity has passed, your regret might shift. Maybe it's regret about not having taken those ambitious trips when you were younger and healthier, or perhaps not having retired early enough to enjoy your savings while still in robust health.
You have to consciously assess your current life stage and make financial choices that minimize the probability of looking back later with deep sorrow.
And this is where the concept of compounding memories becomes so powerful, right?
Absolutely. We focus so much on compounding dollars, which is important, of course. But trading money for time, say, taking a lower-paying job that maybe saves you 500 hours of commuting and stress per year, that's effectively generating thousands of potential hours for shared experiences and memories over the course of a career.
And unlike a financial asset, memories are, inflation-proof, pretty much. They can't be lost in a market crash, and they compound internally by forming the narrative of your life, who you are. That time purchased with savings generates these incredibly valuable intangible assets, memories, character development, wisdom, that are often far more valuable in the long run than the material goods you might have sacrificed to get them.
So we come full circle, back to the core theme of contentment. If you strip away the status chasing and the anxiety, the happiest equation seems remarkably simple. If your expectations grow faster than your income, you will never be happy with your money.
That's the crux of it. The person who technically has everything but constantly expects and wants more feels profoundly poorer than the person who has relatively little but genuinely wants nothing else.
That gap, then, between what you have and what you believe you should have, that's the real determinant of your psychological wealth.
Exactly. We've seen this time and again in people who are, on paper, poor, maybe living off a meager Social Security check. Yet they are perfectly content because their wants are minimal and easily met by simple pleasures, maybe their garden, their neighbors, reading books from the library. They are psychologically rich in a way that many restless billionaires simply cannot comprehend.
And this contentment, it often comes down to the power of contrast, doesn't it? Perpetual luxury seems to diminish appreciation.
It absolutely does. If you have everything you want all the time, you appreciate almost none of what you have. Think about it. The best tasting drink you will ever experience in your life is probably just plain tap water when you are truly deeply thirsty.
Right. The contrast makes it amazing.
That contrast effect is powerfully demonstrated in the story of Ernest Shackleton and his crew after their ordeal in Antarctica. After 19 months of constantly freezing, starving, fighting for sheer survival, they finally made it to a whaling station. Can you even imagine the overwhelming, soul-shaking joy of a simple hot bath, a warm bed, and a basic hot meal?
Unimaginable, really.
That experience of pure, unadulterated, almost magical joy is simply impossible to replicate under conditions of perpetual luxury. That's why the simple life, however you define it for yourself, can actually be the most potent way to maximize the enjoyment of occasional luxuries. The treat feels like magic, not just another necessity you quickly adapt to and then forget about.
It seems when you only look at the external wealth of others, you ignore what they might have paid for it, emotionally or in terms of time. And more importantly, you ignore the internal baggage that massive wealth often carries.
Exactly. We focus on the big houses, the fancy cars, but we ignore the fact that the money likely did not solve the core universal problems of life. Loneliness, family issues, health crises, matters of conscience. Those persist regardless of net worth.
So when you fixate on what more money could buy, you ignore the hidden costs of acquiring it and maybe the baggage that comes along with it. You risk falling onto that psychological treadmill.
Right. Yeah. Where your expectations just perpetually increase, forcing you to feel like you need twice as much as you currently make just to maintain even a fleeting sense of happiness.
Okay, so let's wrap this up with maybe the inverse guide, how to be absolutely miserable with your money. If you follow these rules, you can pretty much guarantee a lifetime of dissatisfaction, regardless of your income level.
Okay, the misery playbook. Rule 1. Rigorously direct your gaze solely at the socioeconomic group just above you. Never look down, never look around. This is basically a contractual agreement with yourself to be perpetually unhappy, as you will always be comparing your current state to the unattainable next level.
Okay, only look up. Got it. Rule 2. Assume that your happiness relies entirely on strangers being impressed by your possessions.
Right. This necessitates pursuing status symbols at the direct expense of your own independence. You must take on that social debt and commit to servicing it, ensuring your life is always slightly too expensive for real comfort or freedom.
Rule 3. Treat all financial decisions as cold, hard math problems. Zero appreciation for reasonable emotion, sentimental value, or the power of purchase time. Buy the cheapest gift, even if it feels hollow. Maximize the commute time if it saves a few bucks, even if it drains your soul daily.
And perhaps the most destructive rule of all, constantly compare your inside, all your secret fears, your deep doubts, your personal anxieties, with other people's curated outside. Their flashy cars, their perfect vacation photos on social media, their polished public image.
You have to maintain the assumption that their material appearance is an accurate reflection of their total happiness and internal security.
Absolutely crucial for misery. And finally, consistently risk what you absolutely need, your family relationships, your physical health, your peace of mind, your character, in order to gain what you ultimately don't need. A slightly bigger raise, a fancier car model, one more meaningless notch on the social ladder.
These behaviors are universally miserable, aren't they? Yet they are practiced daily by people across every single income bracket.
Sadly, yes. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, taking all this in?
I think the core learning is that financial decisions are fundamentally emotional problems that just need to be solved and fulfilled within your budgetary and hopefully ethical boundaries. We have to constantly fight that hedonic treadmill and actively resist the powerful temptation of the outer scorecard.
Yeah.
The true value of money, when used wisely, lies in things like quiet compounding, going slow, focusing on your own internal benchmarks, and really letting your money serve your identity, not define it.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think, and maybe a final thought to leave you with. Start focusing on being a good ancestor. What will you actually leave behind? The sources we've looked at strongly suggest that the amount of money you made or spent will likely have very little to do with whether you lived a good, meaningful life in the eyes of those who matter. Instead, maybe focus on generating those intangible assets, things like character, wisdom, and crucially, the independence to live life entirely on your own terms. Because if the next generation, your kids, your nieces, your nephews, if they're always paying attention, and trust us, they're always paying attention, what do you want them to pay attention to?
That's the question.
Make sure they see money being used not as a loud symbol of status and insecurity, but as a quiet, powerful tool, a tool used effectively to purchase time, freedom, and maybe most importantly, the character necessary to walk away from a race that was never really worth winning in the first place. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take the best articles, research, all that good stuff, and pull out the essential knowledge you really need.
Yeah, distill it down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And today, we're tackling something huge, something that affects, well, pretty much every decision we make. Money.
And more specifically, how we spend it. You know, when we think about personal finance, it's always taught like it's this hard science.
Right, like physics, budgets, interest rates, balance sheets.
All that.
Yeah.
But then you look at real life and you see pretty quickly that the math part, that's actually the easy bit. It's the behavior, the decisions we make, the whole psychology behind it. That's where things get tricky.
That's dead on. So our opening idea today, our thesis, is that money isn't just an entry on a spreadsheet. It's fundamentally a story we tell ourselves, you know. It's wrapped up in our emotions, our identity.
Absolutely. Not just a number.
So we're diving deep into that psychology, the social pressures, the identity issues that really drive how we spend. We want to explore why spending money feels more like an art than some fixed science.
And our mission here is to pull insights from material that really zeroes in on that messy, complicated link between money and, well, fulfillment. Moving past just getting more stuff towards maybe a more durable kind of happiness.
Which brings us right to that big paradox, doesn't it? Can money buy happiness?
Ah, the million-dollar question.
Literally. And the answer seems to be. Yeah, kind of. But it's conditional, right? It's complicated. The real magic, or maybe the misery, it lives in what our sources call the messiness and absurdity of the human mind.
Getting the money is one challenge. Knowing how to use it well for genuine well-being, that's a whole different ballgame.
Which is exactly why we need to start with this idea. Finance is mostly psychology. It's not just math class.
Spreadsheets don't care about your feelings, but your feelings definitely drive how you use that spreadsheet.
It makes me think of that famous line about Winston Churchill and alcohol.
Yeah. Which one?
That he got more out of alcohol than it got out of him. He controlled it. It didn't control him. And you see the opposite with huge wealth sometimes, don't you? People spend their lives chasing it.
And then the money ends up controlling them. Yeah, I've seen that countless times. Rich people, where the money definitely got more out of them than they ever got out of it.
How does that happen?
Well, they spend decades, laser focused on hitting a number, accumulating, but they never really pause to think, okay, how do I actually use this wealth for genuine happiness or peace?
So what happens instead?
Instead, they end up kind of burdened by it. The security worries, the complex taxes, the pressure to keep upgrading bigger houses, more staff, fancier stuff. The wealth itself becomes this demanding full-time job.
That sounds like a strange kind of poverty, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Financial freedom that just locks you into this rigid life. It really hammers home how much identity drives our financial choices. Sometimes it's a huge liability.
Oh, absolutely. Your core identity, how you see yourself, dictates so much about your spending and saving. It often just overrides any logical financial training you might have had.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about two extremes. First, you've got the young person who's basically broke but buys a super expensive car they totally can't afford.
Right, you see that.
Economically, it's madness. But for them, that car isn't just transport. It's a prop. It's validating an identity. They're desperate for the image of success, looking good to their peers.
So the purchase isn't about utility at all. It's buying emotional validation, like a temporary self-worth boost, probably funded by debt.
Exactly. Then flip it. Think about the lifelong saver. This person's been incredibly diligent, maybe saved millions. They hit retirement.
Then they can finally enjoy it.
You'd think. But they literally cannot bring themselves to spend a reasonable amount, even on things they need, like healthcare or experiences they'd enjoy.
Why not?
Because the identity of saver, that responsible accumulator label, it's become fused to who they are. Spending feels like failure, like betraying themselves.
Wow. So they die wealthy, but kind of unfulfilled, because their own psychology won't let them use the money they worked so hard for.
It's tragic, really, and it leads to this key idea from the sources. All behavior makes sense if you have enough information.
Okay, unpack that.
It means that a lot of financial disappointment, ours or judging others, comes from this illusion that there's one single right way to spend money that works for everyone. There isn't.
So the corollary is, don't judge.
Pretty much. Never make fun of how someone spends their money, because they learn those habits from their life experiences. To understand why someone spends the way they do, you have to dig into their unique past, their environment.
Okay, but hold on. If we just say all behavior makes sense, doesn't that kind of let people off the hook? What if someone's clearly wrecking their future with, totally out of control spending? Do we just shrug?
That's a really important point. It doesn't excuse the behavior, but it helps us understand the root cause. And if you understand the why, maybe it's past trauma, maybe it's deep insecurity, then you can actually address the real problem, not just the symptom, which is the spending.
Okay. Treat the cause, not the symptom.
Exactly. There's this powerful anecdote in the source material about a social worker dealing with kids in foster care. These kids might skip class, get into fights, seem totally unable to plan for the future.
Which looks bafflingly self-destructive if you're looking from the outside, from a place of stability.
Right. But view it through their lens. Constant survival mode, never knowing what's next, no reliable security. Suddenly, their actions are completely rational responses to their reality.
They can't afford to think long-term.
Precisely. They're described as Zen masters of the right now. Planning for 20 years out is meaningless when your lived experience teaches you that only the next 5 minutes are guaranteed. Food, shelter, adult support, it's all fluid. So the idea of delayed gratification, it just doesn't compute.
So they're spending, even if it seems trivial or impulsive to us, like on snacks or maybe a status item.
It's about maximizing comfort now, minimizing immediate pain or gaining immediate social standing. It makes perfect sense in their context.
And this idea, this relativity of needs, it applies at the other end too, right? Like the example of the guy who grew up super poor, worked like crazy, became really successful.
Yes. And when his daughter got into college, he didn't look at rankings or value for money. He just said, pick the most expensive school you got into.
Which, to someone maybe middle class, looks totally nuts. Like, why waste the money?
But for him, it wasn't waste. That huge tuition bill wasn't about the education, not really. It was a symbol, a social trophy. It was visceral proof that he'd beaten poverty, achieved the dream. What looks frivolous to one person is a deeply embedded, non-negotiable emotional goal for another.
This ties straight into those emotional wounds that drive big spending habits.
Yeah.
The whole greed and fear cycle where spending is like gasping for air.
Exactly. Think historically, like the Roaring '20s, you had the absolute horror of World War I, then a nasty recession.
And then this explosion of wild spending.
Yeah, but it wasn't logical, was it? It was frantic. It was like this collective sprint to make up for lost time, maybe even get revenge on the years of hardship and uncertainty. It was absolutely gasping for fun after being starved of it.
And you see that same compensation spending today, right? The classic example. The lawyer working 100-hour weeks, totally miserable.
Hating their life, yeah. And they spend lavishly. Maybe an expensive watch they don't need, crazy vacations.
Why?
It's not about needing the item. It's about trying to prove to themselves that the sacrifice, the misery of that job was somehow worth it because the paycheck is huge.
That's the gasping. They are metaphorically held underwater by this soul-crushing job.
And now they surface and gasp, spending big to justify the pain. It's fascinating, though, the contrast you see in the sources. People who are genuinely good at delayed gratification, moderation, sustainable spending, often they're the ones who actually like their work.
So if the job itself is fulfilling,
then the urge to compensate for its awfulness with frantic, emotional spending just isn't really there.
Okay, so if past wounds drive that kind of compensation spending, the next big money pit has got to be the chase for status, right? This whole idea of the finer things.
Definitely. And the perfect, almost absurd starting point is the story of the $21,000 armchair.
Right, tell that one.
So a wealthy guy buys this chair. It's apparently incredibly ugly, just objectively awful design and massively overpriced. The valets helping him move it are kind of baffled, and they ask him about it.
And his answer?
He just shrugs and says, boys, I know, it's crazy, but when you have money, this is what you're supposed to do.
Oof. That phrase supposed to do, it's chilling. It just sucks all the actual happiness or even utility out of the purchase, doesn't it?
Completely. Was he actually happy with this ugly chair, or was he just blindly following some unwritten checklist society hands you about what being rich looks like? It perfectly captures that mindless pursuit of more wealth without ever stopping to ask why.
And it highlights that basic assumption we make that people want more money just to buy more comfort or ease is often just plain wrong.
Dead wrong. What people often crave much more is respect, admiration, attention. Adam Smith wrote about this way back in 1759.
What did he say?
He observed that the real engine of ambition isn't necessarily ease or pleasure. It's, and I'm quoting loosely here, to be observed, to be attended to, with sympathy, complacency, and approbation. Basically, vanity drives us more than comfort. We want people to notice us and approve.
We can kind of test this ourselves, can't we? With that reverse obituary exercise.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. Just take a minute. Think about the end of your life. What do you really want people to say about you?
And it's usually things like, she was loved by her family, he was respected by his colleagues, good parent, honest person, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And what's almost never on that list?
Specifics about your car's horsepower, the square footage of your house, your exact salary, or, the brand of marble in your kitchen.
Right. We know deep down that those material signals don't actually define a meaningful life. They're status markers, often with a zero real utility. Yet that's where so much money and energy goes, trading precious time and resources for what's ultimately fleeting admiration.
And here's the really harsh financial truth that comes out of this. Spending money just to show people how much money you have, it's a super fast way to go broke.
And, ironically, it's a really inefficient, expensive way to gain genuine respect. Because that kind of admiration, the stuff bought with displays of wealth, it's incredibly fragile, it's conditional.
What happens when it flips?
When that admiration curdles into envy, which it often does, the consequences are real, your support network can shrink, people's tolerance for your mistakes, and everyone makes mistakes, just evaporates.
So if you stumble, they don't help you up.
They might actually cheer because they were secretly jealous all along. Ben Franklin knew this centuries ago. He basically said people admire you more if you don't make them jealous. Keep it low-key.
Which leads to that concept from Robert Greene. Show off the inside of your life, not the outside.
Exactly. Focus your spending, your generosity, on the people whose respect you actually crave, usually family, close friends. They care about how you make them feel, how you treat them, not the brand of your watch. Stop worrying so much about impressing strangers.
Because that public display, that outside focus, can create something called social debt.
Right. It's this hidden liability. It's when the way you spend money starts influencing how people see you in ways you don't want. It can make you a target for resentment, for scams, even for official scrutiny.
The story of Frank Lucas, the drug kingpin, is the ultimate cautionary tale here, isn't it?
Oh, absolute perfect example. For years, he was incredibly successful because he kept an insanely low profile. Drove old cars, wore simple clothes, blended in, avoided detection completely. Until one night, a big boxing match in the early 70s, he gave in to hubris, pure ego. He showed up wearing this unbelievably ostentatious, custom-made chinchilla coat, cost like $9,500 back then, and a matching hat. Just pure look at me.
He wanted the attention.
And he got it. Strangers were lining up to take photos with him, admiring this obvious display of massive wealth. But Lucas himself said that single act, that status signal, was the beginning of the end, because someone else was watching too.
Ooh.
The NYPD narcotics unit. He said, "I came to the fight an unknown man. I left that fight a marked man." That coat, that need to show off, directly led to his downfall. It was the most expensive mistake he ever made, far beyond the price tag.
And that same principle, that social compounding, applies to regular people too, even if the stakes aren't life and death. Like buying a new $50,000 car purely for status.
Right. The cost isn't just $50,000, because now you set a bar. That purchase creates this pressure, maybe internal, maybe external, to buy the $60,000 car in 2 years to maintain that image, keep that spotlight.
So it's a treadmill.
A really expensive one, it reinforces that saying, it's very expensive to be rich. Not just buying the stuff, but the ongoing cost of maintaining the image of being rich. That's often the real killer.
Okay, so if chasing status is a dead end, financially and emotionally, then where do we find the real measure of wealth, the kind that actually lasts?
It has to lie somewhere else, and the sources point very clearly towards contentment.
Contentment. So how do we define that? The happiness formula is pretty simple, right?
Beautifully simple. Happiness equals contentment. And contentment is basically what you have relative to what you want.
Have versus want. That's the core.
That's the core, and it immediately highlights the danger of the hedonic treadmill. That's such a crucial idea in all of this financial psychology.
Explain the treadmill again.
It's the tendency for humans to quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative events or life changes. So, you get a raise, buy a new house, you feel happier, but only for a short while.
Then your expectations just reset to that new level.
Exactly. Your baseline adjusts upwards immediately. So if your expectations are constantly growing faster than your income or your possessions, you're basically guaranteeing you'll never feel satisfied. You'll always be chasing the next thing.
So the key isn't just getting more haves, it's managing the wants.
That's where the leverage is. And there's this great case study in the material, the grandmother-in-law.
Yeah, tell us about her.
She lived, apparently, on a really meager Social Security check, technically probably near the poverty line, but she was described as just radiantly happy, completely fulfilled.
Why? What was her secret?
No secret, really. She was just perfectly content with what she had. Her small garden, books from the library, her community. She had very little in material terms, but crucially, she wanted even less.
So the gap between her haves and wants was tiny, or maybe even negative.
Exactly. Her psychological wealth was immense because that gap was negligible. This flips the script, doesn't it? The ultimate measure of wealth isn't just what you possess. It's what you possess minus what you desire.
Wanting less. That's a game you can actually win, unlike the game of always wanting more.
It's the only wealth game you can reliably win, and it leads to durable contentment, not just fleeting pleasure spikes.
And this idea of contentment, is directly tied to the power of contrast.
Right. Absolutely essential. The sources argue that really objectively good experiences don't exist in a vacuum. Good is almost always about the gap between your expectations and the reality you experience.
The Shackleton story illustrates this incredibly well.
Oh, powerfully. So Ernest Shackleton and his crew stranded in the Antarctic for, 19 months?
Yeah, freezing, starving, constant danger, just miserable survival.
Their entire reality was defined by hardship. Now, picture the moment they finally reach a whaling station, civilization, and they're offered the absolute basics: a hot bath, a shave, clean clothes, a simple warm meal, and just 12 hours of uninterrupted sleep in a warm bed.
Things we take totally for granted.
Totally, but for them in that moment, that must have been one of the most intensely joyful, fulfilling experiences imaginable. Not because the bath itself was objectively the best bath ever,
But because the contrast with the preceding 19 months of misery was so immense.
precisely. The joy lived entirely in that contrast.
And the reverse is true, too. Constant luxury dulls the senses.
Right. The person with a private chef making 3 5-star meals every single day. They probably get less cumulative pleasure from their dinner than a kid gets from a rare, unexpected trip to McDonald's. The surprise, the contrast, is missing.
Same with money itself. Going from basically nothing to owning a reliable, beat-up $500 car, that's a huge thrill, massive contrast.
Much bigger thrill, relatively speaking, than going from having $10 million in the bank to $20 million. The contrast is smaller, the marginal utility is lower.
So how do we use this? How do we fight the hedonic treadmill?
The practical takeaway is generate contrast deliberately. Occasional treats provide way more joy than perpetual, everyday luxury.
Like the Arnold Schwarzenegger diet advice.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Eat clean, healthy food most of the time. But occasionally, allow yourself the really delicious, maybe unhealthy cheat meal. Otherwise, as Arnold says, what's the point? The healthy routine gives the treat its power.
And the financial equivalent is the simple life philosophy.
Exactly. It doesn't mean you have to live like a hermit. It just means structuring your life so that money serves you, not the other way around, when you're generally content with a simpler baseline.
Then the occasional luxury, a fancy dinner out, a nice vacation feels amazing. Like magic.
It's because there's contrast. If you expect nothing, everything feels like a bonus. If you expect constant luxury, even luxury feels mundane.
Okay, shifting slightly, what about efficiency in spending? There's this whole debate about obsessing over tiny purchases versus focusing on the big stuff, the triviality trap.
Right. Most people really need what's called a barbell approach, meaning you absolutely have to get a handle on your biggest expenses first. It's almost impossible to build real wealth if you don't control the monsters. Housing, college costs, car payments, healthcare, childcare, these are the big rocks.
And the triviality trap is?
It's getting bogged down in the $3 questions, should I buy this latte, while completely ignoring the $30,000 problems like that huge car loan or runaway credit card debt.
Why do we do that? It seems backwards.
Because the small stuff feels controllable. You can successfully cut back on coffee. Facing down a $400,000 mortgage or $100K in student loans feels overwhelming, terrifying even. So we retreat to managing the trivial because it makes us feel responsible and in control, even while the big leaks are sinking the ship.
Like clipping coupons meticulously while carrying a credit card balance at 25% APR.
It's completely contradictory behavior, but very human.
But wait, didn't Rockefeller make millions by saving tiny amounts, like 1 drop of solder per oil can? So small things can matter.
Yes, but the crucial factor there is scale. 1 drop is nothing. 1 drop multiplied by millions and millions of cans over years, that adds up significantly. So yes, small efficiencies can compound powerfully if you have the scale, and if you've already dealt with the big rocks. You need to plug the major holes in the bucket first before optimizing the drips.
Okay, this leads us to a really fundamental distinction the sources make, one that totally reframes financial goals. We need to talk about being rich versus being wealthy.
Yes, this is absolutely critical. They are not the same thing at all.
So what's the difference?
Being rich is mostly about having money. Cash in the bank, assets you can use to buy stuff you want. It's largely external, visible.
Okay, that's the common definition.
Right. But being wealthy, in this deeper sense, is about having control. Control over your time, control over your choices, control over how money affects your personality and your life. It's internal, often invisible.
So you could be rich, have a high income, lots of stuff, but not actually be wealthy.
Absolutely. If that high income requires you to work 80 hours a week at a job you despise, if you have zero control over your schedule, if you're stressed out of your mind, You might be rich on paper, but you're not truly wealthy. You're trapped. Golden handcuffs.
Wealth without independence is just another kind of poverty.
A very well-compensated kind, perhaps, but still a lack of freedom, which leads directly to the idea that the highest return on investment, the best thing money can buy, isn't more stuff. It's independence. Freedom. Control over your time. Money you haven't spent buys this incredibly valuable, intangible asset. Every dollar you save isn't just future spending power. It's a little piece of autonomy today.
So saving $100 isn't just $100 for later. It's $100 worth of options value right now. Less stress, the ability to walk away from a bad situation.
Exactly. It's an active purchase of freedom, a buffer against bad luck, bad bosses, bad situations.
And this independence, it's not like an on-off switch, is it? It's more of a spectrum.
Right. The sources talk about a spectrum maybe from level 0, total dependence, up to maybe level 15, where you've truly beat the game. We don't need to go through all levels, but a couple are really key for most people.
Which ones?
Well, level 3 might be where you're fully self-supporting, paying your bills, but you're easily replaceable at work. Your boss basically owns your schedule, your day is dictated by others' needs. A lot of people are here.
Okay, what's a better target?
Level 7 is a really powerful goal for many. This is having enough savings, enough FU money, basically, that you can choose jobs that avoid the worst hassles. Crucially, you have the freedom to quit a truly toxic boss or terrible work environment without panicking. You can take the time to find something better, healthier. That's a huge leap in quality of life.
And level 15, that's the dream.
That's the ultimate end game, waking up every single morning knowing you can spend your day doing whatever you want, whenever you want, with whomever you want, for as long as you want. Total control.
And from that perspective, debt looks different too, doesn't it? It's not just about the interest rate.
Not at all. The true cost of debt is the independence it steals. That student loan might have a 6% interest rate, but if it forces you to stay in a job you hate for 5 extra years, the real cost is 5 years of lost freedom, lost career autonomy, much higher than 6%.
So how do we build towards this independence without just, eating ramen for 30 years? How do we live now and build for that future freedom?
This is where the idea of compounding memories comes in. It's a beautiful concept.
Compounding memories. Like interest.
Kind of. Think of memories, especially from shared experiences, as emotional assets. A great family trip you took when your kids were 9. That memory doesn't just sit there. It often grows richer, more valuable over time as you look back on it. It compounds emotionally.
Okay, I like that. So how does it connect to the money part?
It forces you to consider the time for money trade-off very carefully. Imagine you have 2 job offers. Job A pays $50,000 a year, but it's a standard 35-hour week. Job B pays $60,000, but it demands 45 hours a week.
So $10,000 more money for 10 more hours of work per week.
Exactly. The immediate reaction might be, take the $60, but look at the trade. You're giving up 10 hours a week. That's over 500 hours a year of your life, your time.
500 hours. That's a lot of time for potential memories, hobbies, family, just de-stressing.
A huge amount. Compound that over a 30-year career. That's 15,000 hours of discretionary time you sacrifice for the extra $10K per year.
But wait, couldn't that extra $10,000 invested year after year compound into a lot more money for retirement? Isn't sacrificing it a big financial risk?
It absolutely is a financial cost, no question. If you diligently invest that extra $10K every year for 30 years, assuming decent market returns, say 8%, yeah, you could be looking at foregoing something like $1 million in future wealth. It's a significant number.
So it's a massive trade-off.
It is, but it's a trade-off between potential future monetary wealth and guaranteed present time and autonomy. The question becomes, are those 15,000 hours of guaranteed freedom, reduced stress, potential for compounded memories now and over the next 30 years worth that potential $1 million later?
And for a lot of people.
For many, the answer is yes. They're consciously choosing psychological wealth and present-day quality of life over maximizing their future bank balance. It's a valid choice, trading money for time.
And that really embodies the philosophy of quiet compounding, doesn't it?
Perfectly. Quiet compounding is about building wealth steadily, maybe slowly, without fanfare, without needing external validation. Your financial world is internal, played by your own rules.
The superpower is just not caring what the neighbors are doing.
Pretty much. It's keeping your financial universe contained within your own home, your own goals. The ultimate litmus test is asking yourself, Would I still be happy with this financial decision, this outcome, if absolutely no one else outside my immediate family ever knew about it?
If the answer is yes, you're on the right track.
You're playing your own game, and often you find the fastest way to actually get wealthy and that deep sense of independence is to go slow, be consistent. Endurance wins. Quick money, flashy wealth, it's often fragile. Easy come, easy go. Slow and steady, quiet compounding that builds something durable. That internal focus, playing your own game, leads us right into maybe the most emotionally charged financial topic there is, money and our kids. And specifically, how we navigate that relationship to minimize regret down the line.
Yeah, this is where it gets really personal for a lot of people. There's a really powerful insight, and the source is from a priest, someone who spent decades with people at the very end of life.
Right, delivering last rites. He observed something fascinating about what children thank their dying parents for.
What are the...
In what he called the best families, meaning families with strong emotional connections, lots of support, the kids almost always thank their parents for intangible things. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for teaching me dignity. Thank you for always being there.
Not about the money.
Rarely about the money itself, but in families where relationships were strained, or maybe where money was always the main focus, the kids often defaulted to thanking them for material stuff. Thanks for paying for college. Thanks for buying me that car. Thanks for putting food on the table.
Wow. That says a lot. It suggests that what really sticks, what truly matters in that final accounting, is the emotional support, the character building, not just the financial transactions.
Exactly. Which brings us straight to the spoiling dilemma. How do you help your kids financially without completely destroying their drive, their ambition, their need to figure things out for themselves? It's a really fine line to walk.
Charlie Munger had that brutally funny, cynical line about it, didn't he?
Yeah, something like, if you have rich kids and you don't give them money, they'll hate you. But if you do give them money, you'll ruin them. A real catch-22.
Warren Buffett made a similar point, calling out wealthy parents who complain about welfare while basically giving their own kids a lifetime supply of food stamps and beyond through huge trust funds.
Right. The uncomfortable truth is, for most people, needing to succeed, having that fear of failure, that genuine struggle that's a powerful engine for ambition, you can't just buy character or resilience for your kids. They often have to forge it themselves.
And the example parents set is absolutely crucial here, isn't it? You can't preach modesty while living like a king.
That hypocrisy is toxic. If parents demand frugality and hard work from their kids while they themselves are living extravagantly, flying first class while the kids are in coach,
The message the kids might hear isn't, work hard like us.
it might be something much worse, like, we're more important, more worthy than you. Or it teaches them simply to equate money with status and privilege, not with hard work or independence or character. Those mixed signals are poisonous.
So how should parents frame this? What's the goal?
The sources suggest framing it around minimizing future regret. Jeff Bezos used this for big business decisions, projecting himself to age 80 and asking what he'd regret not doing. We can apply it to parenting.
How does regret shift over time with kids?
Well, when kids are young, maybe the potential regret is spending too much, not saving enough, leaving them a financial burden, or not providing security. But once they're grown, the regret almost always shifts. It becomes about the trips you didn't take together, the experiences you didn't share, the time you didn't spend. It's the lost opportunities for connection.
So finding that balance is key.
A noble goal seems to be using money to provide a solid safety net, enough financial security so they don't completely collapse if things go wrong, but never so much that it becomes a crutch. Not so much that they're shielded from the essential life lessons of hard work, earning dignity, finding their own way.
You want them confident enough to succeed on their own terms?
Exactly. And we have to remember, kids are always watching.
Yeah.
Always. They learn our real values, not from the lectures we give about budgeting.
Actually, they probably tune out anyway.
Right. They learn from the 1,000 tiny subtle clues we drop every day. How we react when the tax bill arrives, do we wince? How we talk about the neighbor's new car, is it envy? Do we bicker about spending? They absorb all of that.
So the real parental goal isn't just about managing allowances. It's about demonstrating, through our own actions and attitudes, what money is really for.
Yes. Show them, by example, that the highest and best use of money is buying control over your time, achieving independence, living by your own values, that quiet compounding idea, not using it for flashy displays of status, insecurity, or greed. That's the true inheritance, the character asset they take with them.
Okay, this thread about internal values versus external validation It feels like the final piece of the puzzle, doesn't it? Mastering this distinction seems crucial for deciding whether money brings freedom or just becomes another form of slavery.
It really is the final test in many ways. And there's this incredible dramatic story from the world of sailing, the 1968 Golden Globe race, that illustrates this perfectly. The conflict between the inner scorecard and the outer scorecard.
Set the scene. What was this race?
It was the first ever solo, nonstop race around the world. Hugely ambitious, incredibly dangerous.
And we have two key figures who represent these opposing scorecards.
Exactly. First, there's Donald Crowhurst. He was, by all accounts, utterly addicted to attention, obsessed with winning and the fame it would bring. The problem was, he wasn't actually a very good sailor, and his boat wasn't properly prepared.
Uh-oh. Recipe for disaster.
Totally. When things inevitably started falling apart mid-ocean, he was terrified, not just of sinking, but of the shame of failure, the public humiliation. So what did he do?
Right.
He started faking his position reports, sending false coordinates back home, pretending he was making great progress, when in reality he was often just drifting or sailing in circles. Pure fraud.
All driven by that need for external validation, the outer scorecard.
Completely. But then, the ultimate ironic twist. His fake reports were so good, he started looking like he might actually win the race.
Oh, wow. That must have terrified him even more.
It did. He became paralyzed by the fear of the inevitable exposure. The fame he craved now promised only scrutiny and disgrace. He was trapped by the expectations he'd created by what everyone else thought. He couldn't face the judgment, and tragically, he ended up taking his own life at sea. The outer scorecard literally destroyed him.
Such a cautionary tale.
Half.
And the contrast. Who represents the inner scorecard?
That would be Bernard Moitessier.
Okay.
He was an incredible sailor, a true master of the sea, and he was genuinely in the lead, poised to win the race and the fame.
But he didn't want it.
He came to despise it. The commercialization, the media frenzy, the pressure, he felt it was corrupting the purity of sailing. So, as he neared the finish line, rounding Cape Horn, he did something unbelievable. He made a turn. He slingshotted a message onto a passing ship that basically said, "I'm not finishing. I'm continuing nonstop towards the Pacific Islands because I am happy at sea and perhaps to save my soul."
He just quit while winning.
He quit the race, but not the journey. He sailed on for another 3 months, eventually landing in Tahiti. He ended up setting a world record for the longest solo voyage, but he didn't care about the record. He was living completely by his own internal compass, his inner scorecard.
The difference is just staggering. One destroyed by needing external approval, the other finding freedom by rejecting it.
It perfectly illustrates the choice we all face, in finances and in life.
So how do we apply this inner scorecard to our spending? How do we figure out what genuinely makes us happy, not just what we think is supposed to?
The advice is to try something new, but strategically. Use a wide funnel, but a tight filter.
Okay, explain that. Wide funnel, tight filter.
It means you need to be willing to experiment, to try lots of different things. That's the wide funnel. Spend money on different experiences, hobbies, types of goods, within your budget, of course. Be curious.
Then comes the filter.
Then comes the ruthless filter. You have to be brutally honest with yourself. Did that thing actually bring you joy? Did it add value to your life according to your internal scorecard? If not, cut it mercilessly. Don't keep doing it just because you started or because you spend money on it. That's the sunk cost fallacy. Or because other people think it's cool.
Like forcing yourself to finish a bad book just because you bought it.
Exactly. Or continuing with an expensive hobby that you secretly dread. It's a waste of your precious time and money. Filter it out. Ramit Sethi talks about spending extravagantly on the things you genuinely love and cutting costs mercilessly on the things you don't care about.
So find your thing.
Find your thing, the expense that delivers maximum utility and joy for you, regardless of what others think. And the only way to find it is to try a bunch of stuff and then be really honest about what actually works.
This sounds like prioritizing utility over status again.
It is. When you start focusing on your inner scorecard, you naturally gravitate towards utility, genuine comfort, convenience, quality, things that make your life better rather than just status signals designed to impress others. The pleasure from utility tends to last much longer than the fleeting buzz from a status purchase.
Because status itself is this unwinnable game, right?
Completely unwinnable. The definition of high status is almost always based on exclusivity, having what others don't have. As soon as the masses get access to something, whether it's a certain type of vacation, a college degree, even liking a certain trendy Broadway show,
The elite move on to the next thing.
they have to. The status comes from the scarcity. Once Hamilton was on Disney Plus, did Yale students still see it as high status? Probably not. The goalposts constantly shift. The only way to actually win the status game is to just stop playing. Opt out. Focus on your own game.
Okay, this is a lot to take in the psychology, identity, status contrast. If it feels overwhelming, is there a simpler way to think about it?
There is. It's called the inversion strategy. Instead of trying to figure out the perfect formula for financial happiness, just define and rigorously avoid the things that universally lead to financial misery.
Okay, give us the how to be miserable spending your money checklist. What should we absolutely avoid?
All right, number 1. Constantly compare yourself upwards. Always anchor your expectations and desires to the lifestyle of the socioeconomic group just above you. Assume they have the secret to happiness that you're missing. That's a guaranteed path to feeling inadequate.
Got it. What's next?
Number 2, make money a core part of your identity. Fuse your self-worth to your net worth. Since both your wealth and how others perceive it are inherently volatile and often outside your control, this guarantees an emotional roller coaster of misery.
Okay, avoid that. Number 3.
Pursue status at the expense of independence. Trade away your time, your autonomy, maybe even your health, just to earn enough cash to buy things that impress strangers who don't actually care about you. You're trading freedom for envy. Bad deal.
Makes sense. Number 4.
Risk what you need to gain something you don't need. Think about the lawyers sacrificing their marriage or health for a slightly bigger paycheck they don't actually need, or risking essential savings on a speculative bet, hoping to get rich quick. Never risk what's truly important for something marginal.
And the last one, back to the lattes.
Number 5, obsess over the small stuff while ignoring the big stuff. Fall deep into the triviality trap. Agonize over that $3 coffee while letting thousands leak out through high-interest debt, unnecessary car payments, or an oversized mortgage. This guarantees you'll feel busy and virtuous about saving pennies while the pounds hemorrhage away. Avoid these 5 and you're already way ahead of the game. #outro. So wrapping this all up, what have we really learned today? I think the core message is that true wealth, the kind that lasts, isn't measured by your house size or your car's badge.
Right. It's measured by that internal metric.
Yeah.
The gap between what you have and what you truly want.
Yeah. And you close that gap not just by getting more haves, but primarily by managing your wants, by cultivating contentment, and by using money strategically to buy independence, that quiet compounding.
And doing all of that requires focusing relentlessly on your internal scorecard, not the external noise.
Exactly. Which brings us to one final piece of wisdom from the sources, something that ties it all together. The luckier you are, the nicer you should be.
Okay, why is that? Is it just about being a good person?
Well, there's the moral reason, of course, empathy, basic human decency. But there's also a deeply practical, almost selfish reason to be kind and maintain good relationships. Let's call it good policy.
A selfish reason to be nice. Explain.
It's incredibly strategic, actually. You simply never, ever know where future help or luck or a life-changing opportunity might come from. It's so easy, especially when you're successful, to underestimate how many people you might need to rely on down the road. And you'll only get their cooperation, their help, their goodwill if you've stayed in their good graces.
Don't burn bridges.
Don't burn bridges. The Kevin Costner story is perfect here. He apparently owed his massive breakout film, Dances with Wolves, the one that made his career, to this difficult, abrasive friend, a writer who was broke, sleeping on Costner's couch, and had reportedly pissed everyone off in Hollywood. Nobody would touch his stuff.
But Costner stayed friends with him.
Yeah, Costner showed him kindness, maintained the relationship, even though the guy was apparently tough to deal with. And eventually, Costner reluctantly read his manuscript, and it was brilliant. It became Dances with Wolves. That writer had burned almost all his bridges, but because Costner had kept that one bridge intact, he benefited enormously. Wow. You just never know.
Never alienate people, especially those who might seem down right now. Treat everyone with basic decency and kindness because you have no idea which unexpected connection, which act of goodwill returned might completely change your life's trajectory.
So that leads us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, drawing on Carl Jung. Jung talked about the key factors for human happiness. Things like good health, good relationships, appreciating beauty, meaningful work or purpose, and having a solid philosophical outlook.
And money's relationship to those.
Jung noted money can definitely affect all of those things, positively or negatively. But money itself is not on the list of fundamental factors for happiness.
Okay.
So considering that, and maybe considering the high rate of relationship strain, even divorce, sometimes seen among the extremely wealthy, Here's the question to leave you with. How much of your precious energy, day in and day out, are you actually devoting to acquiring and nurturing the things money cannot buy, like love, deep relationships, health, character, versus how much energy is going towards chasing the things it can buy?
Where is your focus? That's the ultimate financial question, isn't it? The one only your internal scorecard can answer.